Welcome back to Spin on the Connectivi-Tea, the podcast where we're always brewing up conversations worth having and serving the kind of tea you won't find anywhere else in wholesale. I'm your host, Ben Shoesmith, Senior Marketing Executive in the Fixed Wholesale Marketing team here at Virgin Media Business. In each episode, we get the kettle on with the industry expert to spill the connectivity on what's working, what's changing, and what's just starting to simmer beneath the surface, with insights that are always worth a second sip. So grab your drink of choice, settle in, and let's dive into a new conversation. In today's episode, we're bringing you not one, but two expert guests from across the industry. Firstly, we're joined by our very own Ben Archer, Head of Business Development and Infrastructure Sales in the Fixed Wholesale team. Alongside him, we have Will Rhodes, Head of EMEA Partners from Ciena, one of our strategic partners, for a deep dive into AI and data sovereignty. We'll be exploring why data sovereignty has become such a key topic and why it matters more than ever, especially with AI driving huge demand for data movement. We'll then be discussing AI more generally, its impact and what this means for the telco market too. Cool. So welcome to the podcast, Ben and Will.
Thank you.
How are you guys doing today?
Yeah, very good. Looking forward to it.
Good.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for having us.
First time having two guests on the podcast, I will say. So
I'm not called Ben though, so is that going to work?
Mate, we should have thought about that.
Yeah.
Should have thought about that. So just to give listeners an introduction to yourselves, it'd be great if we could just hear a little bit about your role, your career, and also the relationship between VMB and Ciena too. So Ben, I'll start with you if that's okay.
Cool. My name's Ben Archer. I'm Head of Business Development and Infrastructure Sales at Virgin Media Wholesale. I've only ever worked at Virgin Media, so I've been here 14 years, mostly in sales, mostly working with infrastructure partners and carriers and mobile operators, and still doing the same and still enjoying it.
Yeah, so thanks, Ben. So I'm Will Rhodes. I'm the Head of EMEA Partners at Ciena. So Ciena is a large network infrastructure provider working very closely with carriers all over the world, including obviously Virgin Media Business. And my team's role is really to help with two things. One is to help our strategic partners like Virgin really understand where the market's going and help them bring new services to market. And then once those services are in market, to help them monetize it through various activities to help drive top line revenue.
Right, I've got some questions as well, just so they can get to know you on a more personal level too. Obviously themed around the tea pun.
Go for it.
So the first one, if you were hosting a tea party, who were the three guests you would have around the table? They could be dead or alive. Who wants to go first? Will?
Go on.
Three people. I would say Martin Luther King. The classic answer. I think it'd be fascinating. I would say Einstein, but it may be bore people. I don't know. Let's see. And then the third one, probably David Attenborough. That'd be
That's a good table.
Yeah. You take one of mine. I'm an absolute space and science nerd. I was going to have Einstein, Euler, he's a mathematician, physicist, and Neil deGrasse Tyson. Amazing. He'll be an amazing guest. Oh, he's like I don't know if you've seen him. He's like a famous physicist, astronomer type thing. He does podcasts and he's quite famous. I'll show you after. He's really cool.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
I was thinking about this on the way up. Mine, I would say Princess Diana.
Okay.
Beyonce,
of course,
and
she put a ring on it.
Yeah, she really did. And then probably Stormzy. I think that would be a good mix of people around the table. So
I was listening to some Stormzy on the way into.
Was you?
Yeah.
There you go. It's a sign. When things get stressful, what helps you stay calm and not spill the tea? So what helps keep you grounded, switch off from work, maybe? Ben?
Am I allowed to say wine? I won't say wine. That's the evening one. I like my exercise. So I like going to the gym, getting outside. I like doing big long walks in the fields. So quite nice to get loads of fields and forests and woods where I am. So big long walk, a little bit of a gym session, that'll do me.
And a glass of wine to finish.
And a lovely single glass of wine to finish it all off. Yeah.
I'm definitely going to echo you on the wine. Probably more of something like a Santa Million or something like that. But for me, that really grounds me is my kids. Two beautiful girls, and they bring me back to normality very quickly. And the rest of the world means nothing when they're going.
Amazing.
Didn't he say to relax and wind down? My kids definitely do not.
We're going to talk about that. You need the wine to relax with kids. Well, we won't talk about that.
And obviously, you guys work quite closely together. What is the perfect pairing that would sum up how you work together? It's like a food pairing.
Food pairing.
Food pairing.
Yeah.
Maybe it's steak and wine, steak and red.
That'll do that. That's a pretty
Yeah.
common theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who's the steak? Who's the red?
Oh, I don't know. That'll be a fight for later.
So obviously today we're chatting around AI and all things data sovereignty. To kickstart, I think we should chat around AI first. Obviously, it's very much a buzzword at the minute. So it'd be great to. I'll start with you, Ben. Just in case anybody doesn't know what AI is, just to hear what it is, and then also how you both using it personally and what value it brings to yourself, but also the market as well.
So definitely not an AI expert, but I can give it a go. So AI at the minute is what we're seeing is basically very, very smart computing, and we're seeing it in kind of ways in the consumer way where we are interacting it with, like, you see like ChatGPT, you've got Claude and things like that, which are kind of like agentic AI, where you'll ask them a question, they'll help you with the answer. There's lots of other kind of smart businesses doing things with AI to help with their software and kind of their processes and things like that as well. But I don't know too much about that, but I know it goes on. And in terms of how I'm using it, I think the best use case for how I'm using it is I've got two small boys. I've got a 6-year-old boy, Reese, who's autistic, and a 3-year-old, and I use it to go Claude or ChatGPT. I've got the kids, need to go on a day out. Give me some like Zen friendly activities or something like that for the day that I haven't done before, because I've gone to a million zoos, I've gone to a million farms. Try and find me something like Zen friendly where I can bring the boys with my wife and something that we haven't done before, and it's amazing for that. It's really good for that. That's how I use it most.
Brilliant. What about you, Will?
I mean, maybe to add to that, I mean, personally, I use it. It just drives a huge amount of efficiency. You can. We went to an event last week in Dublin, fantastic event, CCT, and I was able to take my notes and just consolidate that into a short report in seconds. Historically it could have taken me hours to write that up, and I was able to share that with the leadership team. And so, it's lots of people are scared of AI because they think it's going to take jobs. I don't think that's the case at all. It's more is around driving efficiency, and we're using it more and more to improve product life cycles or bring products to market quicker. Or look for errors in code quicker, and all those sort of things. It's I think it's a real industrial revolution, I would think, rather than this sort of evolution of technology. So it's an amazing time to be in this industry.
I would say on the productivity benefits are insane. Like just doing like more administrative tasks like creating a PowerPoint or drafting an email. It's brilliant. It's like
that's same. I was going to say, like, for me,
Yeah.
I use probably Copilot daily at work. Obviously, it's integrated into Microsoft, like for emails, for spell checking. But then also I was thinking like having an Alexa in the home or like a Google Home.
Yeah, yeah.
I have one of those in my room, which I use every day. I've been using that for like nearly 10 years. I didn't even know that was AI, really. Do you know what I mean? And then now it's like you clock on to how actually it's been around us for a long time, and it's a tool we should all definitely embrace.
For sure.
So, Will, I'm going to come to you for this one. There seems to be very much this AI boom at the minute. So we've got companies leading this like OpenAI, Anthropic, for example. So what is going on right now in terms of this AI boom, and how do you think this will trickle down and affect the market, the telco market in the UK?
I think the first thing to say is that there's this huge investment in capex right now. So if you look at like the big four hyperscalers, so Meta, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, they're spending something like $750 billion, so $1 billion just on AI infrastructure this year, in addition to other capex spend. And then you mentioned people like Anthropic, and you've got the Mistrals and the OpenAI, XAI, all these other sort of neo-scalers that they're, in addition, are spending another $300 billion on capex, AI capex this year. So it's just this huge amount of investment going into AI. So, and that's why my point earlier was around this is more than just like an evolution of technology. It's a full-scale industrial revolution. But most of that investment at the moment is going on compute. Right, so that's the GPUs that go into the data centers. But I think one of the things that's really fascinating, but also a huge opportunity for the likes of Ciena, for Virgin Media Business Wholesale, is that what happens next? Because you've put all this investment into compute, you now need to connect it, because a data center without that connectivity is just a shed. Right, and so you really need to put that bits of string together to connect the data center, and then you can really realize the gains of these investments.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think ultimately, like, these guys are spending an absolute ton of money that Will's just said about, right? But they're very much in the build phase. Like, they're building it, they're training these LLMs. They're making them learn and get better, and but eventually they're going to have to start to monetize all the stuff they're investing in, right?
Yeah.
And consumers will be part of that monetization. As you can already buy like pro packages for all these agentic AIs, right? But ultimately, the enterprises they're gonna be where the monetization happens, and so like ultimately, enterprises in the UK are going to buy AI powered whatever, whether it's like smart networking, whether it's kind of the software they're buying, or like design tools themselves. Enterprises are going to be the ones eventually putting the money back into that kind of AI economy, and those enterprises are going to have to think about, yes, I've got this great new tool, great new bit of software, but is my network built to actually run that properly?
But I think that's the interesting bit, right? Because as you said, most of that investment today has gone very much on the training these models. So building out these big LLMs and building out those models, right? But where the monetization piece is where this sort of great flip, as it's often been referred to, as you move into inference. And that's where you're interacting with those models. And to do that, you need the network to be where people are, where the enterprises are. So that's the real interesting dynamic that I think we're going to see in the next few years, is this movement towards inference that I think we're underestimating how much that potential is going to be in the future.
Mm-hmm. And I think we also hear a lot about the AI growth zones and like onshoring compute and things like that. I wonder if you could chat around the AI growth zones and just exactly what that means.
Yeah, so if you look at places like in the UK, you've got places in Blythe, in Northumberland, you've got North Wales. They're these sort of areas where historically you won't have had large investments in compute. So historically, look at the UK, huge amount of investment in compute in Slough, and the Docklands to a certain extent, obviously, originally. There's been Manchester more recently popped up, but there's only limited space and power available there. And these GPUs are extremely hungry in terms of their power consumption. Just to give you a reference point, so a typical high-end compute data center today might have something in the region of 10 kilowatts per rack. Whereas you put these GPU deployments, you're talking somewhere between 100 and 200 kilowatts. So 10 to 20x the amount of energy that you need for that same square footage. So that availability of power becomes more and more important. So you're putting it into places where historically you haven't, away from eyeballs, away from people, near power stations or where there's availability of power. But then the flip side of that is then you need that connectivity to get that access wherever those enterprises are, the consumers are, into those growth areas. So it's a really interesting dynamic that there's all this compute, and it's not just in the UK, you're seeing in Norway, in Iberia, in Saudi Arabia, all sorts of places, but you need to have the connectivity to then get access to that compute.
100%.
One cool stat I read somewhere is that there was one of these new hyperscale data centers popping up, and it's something like it was 1 or 2 gigawatts of energy required for the data center. And like, to put that into perspective, like our nuclear power stations, I think there's one at Hinkley Point that's being built, and that the output of that entire power station is like, that nuclear power station is like 2 gigawatts or 2.5 gigawatts. So like these data centers alone are consuming half, if not an entire nuclear power station's worth of energy. Like, it's absolutely insane what they're doing and building.
And that data center market, right, that's only increasing, is that right to say? I'm like interested to hear about like
I
more
mean,
and more data
you've
centers
got in
popping
the
up.
UK probably something, depending on how you draw the map, but something in the region of about 1.2, 1.4 gigawatts of compute capacity in the UK right now. And by 2030, the forecast is around something like 2.5 additional gigawatts. So you're over tripling the size of that market of compute in the UK alone, let alone all the other places in the world, right? So it's we haven't seen the scale of this is not something we've seen ever.
In terms of like numbers of data centers, it's fairly linear, but like growing. But like the energy demand of these new data centers, like it's quadratic, right? Like the absolute demand is through the roof.
But it's funny because, like, for example, I mean, I've been in the industry for many years. Same hairdresser for all that time, and he's never taken an interest in what I do. But recently, he goes and talks to me about data centers, and this is just my local hairdresser. So everybody has an opinion about data centers now, even hairdressers.
Yeah. Everyone's chatting about AI, aren't they? Everyone's chatting about data centers. It's the way it's going, isn't it? Something we actually weren't speaking about enough 5 years ago was probably data sovereignty. I don't think it was hardly spoken about, or spoken about, like, if at all. So Ben, I'm going to come to you for this one. What does data sovereignty actually mean? Why does it matter so much now, and why are businesses perhaps worried about this as well?
So first of all, I need to make sure I say sovereignty right, because 60% of the time it's sovereignty and 40% of the time it's sovereignty. So data sovereignty is it's fundamentally it's making sure that the data that is basically being stored in a particular geography, like your let's say the UK. The talent and the people that can access that data are also in the UK, and the data is not going outside. So taking us an example, it's making sure that data is kept securely in country, and we kind of are confident and make sure that we have control of that all the time. And it started becoming more prevalent recently. You've seen there's like geopolitical stuff going on, right? And you've seen all the things about subsea cables and all that kind of stuff. So it makes sense why it's more of a big thing now. But it does represent a big opportunity for us, right? Because look, if you take us an example, we've got a fantastic like domestic network. There's lots and lots of investment in this AI growth zones and everything going on in the UK. So it's a good opportunity. And kind of the way I see it, it's we've had like probably a decade or so of probably data centralization, right? We've got the hyperscalers, which have like done a fantastic job of making these enormous data centers, enormous cloud networks, and storing kind of all that data in one space. That will still continue to happen, but I imagine you'll probably have this like hybrid approach, right? Where you've got these huge hyperscale data centers, but then you'll have these kind of regional kind of metro type networks as well. You've got data centers, which are the ones that are all popping up in the UK, supporting that kind of sovereign angle as well on the side of it.
I think that's the interesting thing, isn't it? It's not a new topic. It's been around for many years, but with the geopolitical tensions, you only got to see the recent thing where you banned Fable, the Claude new model got banned. There were some countries in Asia Pacific that got their internet cut off. All of a sudden, this sort of this view that you need to protect, you do the protectionist type things, has become more and more prevalent. So you've got the new CADA Act from the European Union. There's similar things going on in the US, and there's just more and more and more attention. But I think the fascinating bit is that most of that historically, or even now, is on the compute side. But again, this is where you start moving that data around the network. You want to make sure that's inherently sovereign as well, right?
I can look in the next few years. I can definitely see, especially like government contracts and anyone close to that, there just being like a tick box in every RFP, every tender, right? Says where's the data going? Is the data being held in the UK within country type thing like that? So I can very, very quickly see it becoming like a table stakes requirement for UK networks.
I think the idea of like data and cloud usage sounds something very like detached from normal life, but actually it's part of our daily life now, isn't it? So you've got like streaming services or sort of healthcare systems that all incorporates the idea of data sovereignty and storage as well. Will, one for you. What does a sovereign data network architecture actually look like?
So I think a really good example of that is if you look at Germany, for example, right? So Lidl, the supermarket chain in Germany, they went to the usual players, the AWSs, the Azures, and frankly, they just didn't believe it. That when they said they wanted to keep their data within the bounds of Germany. And yes, you can tick the box, but they just didn't believe the answer they got back. So then they built this whole company separately to basically provide compute for them that they had full control over. It's a company called Digital Schwartz. And that Digital Schwartz has now become one of the largest cloud providers in Germany, competing with the likes of AWS and Azure and Google Cloud and stuff, because it's inherently based in Germany. And Germany's probably in Europe probably leading this sort of sovereignty agenda. And then we're now moving to the point that you start to see France and the UK are following suit. So I think this topic is going to become more and more top of agenda for sure.
I love that example. I've heard it before. And they're like, we need this type of network, and like they've gone to like the normal suspects, right? And they've gone, sorry, can't do it. And they're like, right, we'll just do it ourselves. And like and that's why it's a good opportunity for us, right? Because there's plenty of UK networks that can be those go-to people to build those like sovereign data networks for people.
Yeah, but you all need to make sure your tomatoes information and data on tomatoes stays in the UK.
Yeah.
And there's crucial, there's different layers to it, right? So you have like I believe there's a transport layer, and there's, I don't know if you could chat around that a little bit more, the different layers to the network.
That's your bag.
We don't need to go too technical, but you've got different layers of the network. So you've got the virtual physical layer, and then goes up the packet and IP, and then goes up the stack. It's called the OSI stack. But obviously, if you've got on the networking side, it's the physical, where that data physically goes. And so, to Ben's point earlier, Ben Archer, just to be clear, that it stays with, that the data physically stays within the bounds of the UK, for example.
No, that makes sense. And if anyone watching the podcast, any of our partners perhaps, are looking at an AI or a cloud networking opportunity in one of these growth areas, what should they be asking when it comes to connectivity and the network they need?
Yeah, I think what we see in some of these growth areas, they are like very much non-typical locations, because they could be an area where there's amazing like energy distribution and availability of energy. So you might have some disused power stations, or just a really good energy grid which is next to kind of North Sea wind or something like that, right? But they're typically not areas which are immensely well served by networks, because they might not have like a load of consumer population or something around there, right? So I think when we look at these kind of new AI growth zones, it's kind of looking at is there really a network there that can support what is eventually going to be a very highly centralized compute zone, like, and the chances is probably not, right? So then there are kind of products, and look, we can build with our partners as well in the market to make sure that these growth zones can be very well served by networks, and very well served by resilient, high capacity networks, which is exactly what these zones are going to need. So I think it's identifying these areas, and on a case by case basis, it's like
And the other dynamic, as we sort of mentioned Norway earlier, is and other countries where there's vast availability of renewable power. There's large compute going in on the south coast of Norway, but if you're an enterprise in the UK wants to get access to that, then it's around from, I don't know, Stevenage or wherever it is, and then to a cable landing station, and then across those subsea cables. And so, that's why it's critical that it's both these availability zones in the UK, but actually access to the wider international market through the cables and stuff.
No, it makes sense. So from what I'm understanding, like a UK owned network offers a stronger sovereign foundation for this than perhaps controlled outside the country, and that's what we offer, right, at Virgin Media Business, with the help of Ciena.
It gives you a really good like first out the block kind of advantage, because people with global networks can build sovereign like regional zones, right? But it's going to take them some time. They're going to have to review where the people in their businesses kind of support, looking like if they've got support centers around the world. It doesn't help if you're trying to make a sovereign network in the UK. So for us and kind of other operators in the UK, we've already got that first mover advantage. Like, most of our stuff is already here. It's not going to take us very long to make it completely sovereign. So that's the main thing.
Will, just I suppose in terms of thinking about where the market's heading, how do you see this kind of data sovereignty piece, AI, growing, and the impact, especially on the wholesale telco market?
I think it comes right back to what we were talking about right at the beginning around AI, right? So you've seen this sort of real boom in training, and those GPUs being deployed to build out those models, right? But if you look at a lot of the analyst forecasts, that market is starting to sort of taper off. Still huge numbers, you only look at Nvidia's, AMD's, and others financials, and they're absolutely storming, right? But I think the interesting dynamic is this pivot towards inference. It's where those enterprises really interact with those models and search for the latest cancer drug, or look for healthcare, in healthcare, sorry, or in financial services, look for fraud in transactions and stuff. Is interacting with those models, and that those analysts are like predicting this hockey stick, this exponential growth, as Ben was saying earlier, in those inference GPU deployments. And those GPUs are going to get deployed much, much, much closer to those, those end users or those enterprises in places like Bristol or Swindon or places like that, which historically have not been large areas of compute. So I think we're in this fantastic, amazing opportunity right now to really monetize this investment. As if you are an enterprise in Swindon and you want to be able to take advantage of all these amazing things that AI can do, you need a network that's going to connect you in a sovereign way to the GPU computes for inferencing, and pivot which industrial thing you're making this week, or look for natural fraud, or whatever it may be. But it's this pivot towards inferencing, and the inherent sovereignty part of that is going to be a really fascinating opportunity over the next 3, 4, 5 years.
I think the example I really like on that in terms of like performance sensitive applications of it is it's autonomous cars. Like if you're going to have a car that's like driving you and thinking and spotting all these things on the road, and like we're always limited by like the laws of physics, the speed of light, right? If it has to go a really long way to maybe another continent to go get the answer it needs, like do I go left or right at this like pivotal moment? Yeah. We can't afford for that car to think for too long, so it does need these like regional networks.
Yeah, although in that case, I would say that inferencing is going to happen on the car, right? But that's my view. But I think there are certainly many other use cases where there are latency sensitive, but equally there are other use cases that are not that latency sensitive. So if you're going to do a big piece of analysis, you could send that to somewhere like Norway, but there are ones that are highly sensitive, like looking for fraud in transactions. All of a sudden you could be saving billions and billions of dollars by doing that compute, and you probably need to do that very, very quickly, right? So I think it depends on the use cases, and many of these are still, we don't even know what they're going to be yet because they're just being developed right now.
I've heard you say GPU a few times. In case any of the listeners don't know what that means, could you just say?
Of course.
What that stands
right.
for,
So the way I would describe this, or analogy I would say, classical computing is the CPU, right? And CPU basically does sequential processing, so it's one thing after another. So my analogy I would say for this is like a paintball gun painting a picture, one paintball at a time. So boom, 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 boom. GPU, or graphical processing unit, does everything all simultaneously. So it does all the processing all in one go, and it's highly efficient. So back to my analogy of the paintball gun, rather than one paintball gun doing boom, 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 it's like 100 paintball guns painting a picture in one go. And so it just does everything very, very, very efficiently, and it's all doing all that compute all at the same time. But to my point earlier, they are very power hungry when they do this. So they're very efficient at doing it, but they consume a lot of data.
I saw a TV show once where they painted like the Mona Lisa with like
it was a Mythbusters.
That was it. Yeah.
Well, that makes sense. Like the need for the network, like everything like that. Sadly, we are nearing the end of the conversation. It's flown by for me, and I found it really, really interesting. But before we wrap up, it's time for our Spill It Quick segment. So we do this at the end of every episode. We ask the same 3 questions to all the guests to get their take on these quickfire ones. So again, it's very much quickfire. I'm not looking for anything overly complex or well thought out. I'm going to come to you, Will, first. What is the industry myth you'd love to stir up or set straight?
The industry myth. Ooh. I would probably actually say the one that Ben. Well, I'd say the autonomous vehicle one. That's the use case. Everybody says, "Oh, you need this low latency network." I think that if you've got the situation in front of you, you don't want that going over the network. That inference is going to happen on the edge.
You reckon it's not going to happen on like a base station or something like that?
I don't know. Yeah, that for me is a myth. That's probably one I would say.
Yeah.
What about you, Ben?
I don't know whether this is like a myth or something to stir up, but like you see, I see a lot of charts about like the UK's and like the bandwidth and the capacity and the throughput that we've got in the UK compared to other countries, and we always looks like we're lagging behind a little bit. But I think just stirring that up, my view is that we've got plenty of capacity and we need to build networks as and when we want to. But I think what the UK is really, really good at, and it might be because of our geography and the size of it and the fact that we've got different economic zones, is we've got like a really, really good, like diverse and resilient network across Earth and other carriers. And I think that's probably more important than the capacity than I always read in charts and things like that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Next one then. I'm going to go to Ben first this one. What is the next big brew in connectivity, the next trend we should be looking out for? I don't know, that's probably a lot of what we mentioned today.
Next big trend.
Is there something outside of that?
We should say data centers in space, really, based on what's been a little bit. But I think like satellite is clearly becoming a little bit more prevalent. Like ourselves, we've just done O2 satellite, and I think satellite is probably going to be. It's never going to like replace fixed networks, right? But it seems like it's going to be an extremely complementary service to our fixed networks, right? Whether that's for consumers or enterprises. So it's not. It's kind of like not a next big thing because it's already here. But I think kind of the adoption and like the props and propositions coming out will start to include more and more kind of satellite wrapped up and stuff.
I think that's a good one. I would say quantum. We've not, it's not obviously AI is going to be for a while, I would say, but the idea that you download and store and decrypt later is a real threat, particularly in places like financial services and stuff. So we're seeing more and more interest in things like QKD, PKD, or QKD, PKD type applications. So you're encrypting and protecting that data, that mission critical data for Q day, whenever that happens in the future.
Q day.
Yes.
Is it Quantum Day? Is it?
Quantum Day, where when you basically you can, the algorithms.
Terminators, right?
That's it. Yeah, the T1000's going to come back, Ben. It's coming for you.
And then the last one, then for you both. We'll start with Will for this one. It's more a personal question.
Mm-hmm.
Every career has its ups, its downs. You could say that has its bitter brews. What is one challenge you faced that has shaped your approach today?
Oh, good question. I think that you, in your career, that you naturally have very, very good leaders that you work for. And then let's say you have leaders that are not so good. And like working through that and navigating that can be challenging at times. But when you get a really good leader, that just gives you that opportunity to thrive. And so, I think that's where, if I was, provide advice to people, I would say, you work through that, find what works for you. But it's, you will naturally get those sort of ebbs and flows and stuff in your career.
And it's all a learning curve, isn't it?
100%. Learn stuff every day.
I think I would say that businesses aren't always ready, built, and organized for like the way they potentially should be in the future, right? So they're organized and built for a certain reason at that point in time, but like the future may change. So I think that there's so much opportunity coming in the future, and I think it's not to let kind of current organizational design and the way things are built and the products that you've currently got dictate how you should be thinking going after opportunities. I think that's the main thing, is if there's an opportunity out there and it might need us to do something a little bit different, it might need us to take a different approach, have some new partnerships and do things like, don't let that stop you going out and doing it and trying different things. I think definitely try and break the mold a little bit, because we're definitely in a time where like even the most mature enterprise don't really know what's going to happen in the next 5 years. So it's definitely interesting.
Amazing. Well, sadly, that is a wrap on today's episode. A huge thank you guys for joining us. It's been great to chat all things data sovereignty, AI, the ever evolving market landscape, and where you guys think that's heading next.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah. If you enjoyed the conversation, make sure to hit follow or subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We'll be back soon, serving up more stories, more insights, and plenty more behind the scenes connectivity that you won't find anywhere else.